people, process, technology. I think you have to have individuals in your organization that are adept as it relates to technology. They understand technology. They understand that technology is ever evolving. It never stops evolving.
Is there something your team touches that you no longer need? Or is there something your team touches that's been upgraded, but you haven't trained to keep up? Is there something your team's using, touching, doing that isn't worth the time and dollar investment? You have to be willing to look objectively because it's always tempting to keep it all. Keep it all.
The analysis that the AI products are doing is something that we used to do ourselves, but now it just moves at lightning speed. So how do we balance technology with our human expertise to drive smarter, fairer, and more efficient multifamily results and experiences?
Many of us today, subconsciously, we understand it's not a replacement, that technology is a tool.
Are you tired of doing the same thing in repeating situations which end up with the same result? Maybe it's time for a new perspective. This is Viewpoints on the Multifamily Media Network. Our hosts discuss a topic from different angles and provide actionable ideas. Maybe a new view would change the outcome. Welcome to MMN Viewpoints.
Welcome to another Viewpoint. Give you my viewpoint about technology this month. So my name is Mike Brewer. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at the ARC Multifamily Group, which is based in Irvine, California. We have an Atlanta office. And my viewpoint on technology doesn't actually start with technology. I think it's very important that we think about three things when we think about technology. And technology is one of the things. We think about process, people, and technology. And I think it's really important to think about it actually in this order: people, process, technology. I think you have to have individuals in your organization that are adept as it relates to technology. They understand technology. They understand that technology is ever evolving. It never stops evolving. In fact, the accelerating pace of advancements and improvements in technology is moving so rapidly, we can't hardly keep up with it anymore. There are advancements every single day of the week that are just leapfrog events versus yesterday in some cases. You see it with OpenAI and other large learning models. That being said, you have to have A players in your organization that understand how to leverage and use technology in a way that really enhances their productivity. It enhances their ability to serve their constituent parties, right? Be it the customer or the team member or your supplier partner or an owner or an investor. But once you get the people equation right, those people must go to work on understanding what the processes are in your organization to create the outcomes that you're after. So you kind of start with the end in mind. You understand what the outcome is as it relates to your consumer's experience, your team member and the team member's experience, the supplier partners that you want to work with. There's an experience that your supplier partners must realize in your organization, like quick bill pay for their services rendered. And then also your owners and your investors, a very important part of the equation, right? They're a constituent. You have to think through all the processes that are germane to those various constituents in your organization. So good people, good processes, you want those processes to create outcomes that are beneficial for all those parties. And I just did a post about this the other day. The way technology is moving in our organizations today, you almost have to step back, metaphorically blow up your organization, think about it from a blank slate, think about all your constituent partners that you're serving from blank slate perspectives or first principles. Carve out all the things that aren't necessary anymore because technology can actually replace old processes, old systems, old disciplines, old routines. So blank slate, all those workflows germane to those constituents, and think through using technology, using AI, how you might redo that process, right? This is an organizational design issue. People talk about centralization, you talk about other things related to that. In my head, this is all about OD, organizational design, blowing it up, thinking about it from first principles, eliminating all those things that don't matter anymore, putting technology in their place, and coming out on the other side with a very effective and efficient machine that produces outcomes that are good for the customer, good for the team member, good for your investors, certainly, and good for your supplier partners in addition to that. So only after you've got the good people, you've redefined your processes and your systems, then you can go out and actually identify those technologies that you can put against those processes that will ultimately end up enriching and edifying the people back at the beginning. So good people working on smart process, and then and only then do you think about the technology that you can incorporate or leverage or put into your system so that you can produce incredible outcomes for the people. People meaning customers, people meaning team members, people meaning vendor and supplier partners, and people meaning your owners and investors. That's my viewpoint for this month of May 2025. Take care. We'll talk to you again soon.
Technology. Is it multifamily's friend or foe? I bet if you tried to guess how many dashboards, apps, websites, portals, all the things that your team members use in any given day, week, or month, you'd guess phenomenally low, ridiculously low. I don't think you'll even believe how many apps, dashboards, websites, portals, all the things your team really has to touch to do their jobs. Stick around for the next 10 minutes or fewer, and I'll share my viewpoint, tell you our number, and give you some best practices for your tech stack and your team's sanity and productivity. Now, keep in mind, I love all the shiny objects. I love technology. In fact, I was at a conference last week, and a speaker talked about a tech tool, and I ordered it on Amazon on the spot during his session. It's way cool. It's a full-size folding keyboard. See that? It folds up, and it connects to your phone or iPad by Bluetooth. It makes your phone or your iPad a computer, basically. Now, that's a shiny object I couldn't resist. So just to establish the baseline here, I love all the shiny objects so much that we have a governor of technology. That person keeps me and some of our other team members corralled in. I'm a little bit kidding, but it's kidding on the square. Tracy Beck is our Director of Strategic Operations, and part of her role is to do a systematic vetting of any tech direction or product before we roll it out, and make sure we roll it out properly, because it is such a big deal and so disruptive if you do it wrong. And I have to confess, I did a major bad rollout of a technology once, and I never want to live that again. So she implemented SEA, an acronym for Simplify, Eliminate, and Automate. Simplify, Eliminate, and Automate. So back to our tech stack. We polled some of our senior managers on how many tech tools they touched on a given day or week or month, and I was shocked at the total number. I was shocked in part because we're pretty conservative about adding technology. We're third-party managers, which means we don't own any of our properties. All of our properties are owned by someone other than us. So we're pretty sensitive about how we spend their money, other people's money. We're pretty sensitive about it and want to make sure before we add something that it really adds value for the cost and the time investment. And if it doesn't integrate effectively with our property management software, it really has to provide an even better return on investment. So I need a little drum roll here. I polled our senior managers who listed all the apps, portals, websites, dashboards, yada, 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 that we regularly use. And are you ready? When I ask this question outside our organization, when I ask other people how many they think we're using, they usually guess 5 to 10. Somebody even guessed one time, maybe even as high as 15. But the answer is, it's 51. 51. We use 51 apps, websites, portals, whatever, and we don't adopt all the things. Now, granted, our managers were counting every single thing from Word and Excel to the payroll time reporting app. And, I would dare say to you, if we asked some of the bigger, more institutional management companies, you'd find even more. Their number would be even higher than ours because we really don't adopt all the tech. So the more you have tech stack, the more technologies you use, the more reliant our team members are on that tech and not their talent. The more reliant they are on technology and not thinking. The more reliant they are on computers and not customer service. And do you really need all of these technologies? Do you really need them all? Our managers and leasing teams are so busy. I doubt any of them say they need more to do, more apps, more dashboards, more whatever. Most say they can't get done what they have on their plates now. So adding something that's another thing for them to touch, I'd really question it. Technology is really supposed to make our lives easier, more efficient, more productive. But the tools that are available, you have to be very careful because they're so fragmented. Our industry uses so many tools that weren't designed to work together. They're so fragmented. So you have to be very careful. And hence, let's talk best practices. Best practices. My number one is be slow to roll it out. Be slow. You lived without it before, so don't be in a rush to add anything. Don't be in a rush to add anything. First is be slow. Don't add anything. My second is vet it out with a vengeance. Vet it out with a vengeance. We set minimum criteria. Does it integrate? Does it integrate with our software platform? Does it integrate both ways or just one way? And is it like a super Uber integration? If it doesn't integrate and integrate well, then for us to accept it and add it, it really has to do miraculous things. I mean, miraculous things. If it doesn't integrate seamlessly both directions, we try not to even consider it unless it really adds value, unless it truly has measurable return on investment and it vetted out great. So I want to share with you our handy vetting checklist. And if you want a copy, a soft copy by email, just feel free to reach out after this. I'll give my email address at the end. So our checklist includes these questions. Does it integrate with our software? One way or two ways? Does it fit our simplify, eliminate, automate protocol? Will it make things easier for people? What problems does it solve? What benefit does it provide? Does it save money? Is it easy to train? Can it handle a growing team? Will it actually make things more efficient? Will everyone have an equitable opportunity to benefit from this application? Do they provide ongoing training or is it a one and done? What does their support look like? Is there a separate login, an additional dashboard, an app, or a portal? Do you have to go on their website to use it? And what about references? Does someone who uses our property management platform use it, and can we talk to them? So that's the checklist, which again, I'm thrilled to be able to share with you after this. So in addition to taking the time to vet all the tech you see and want, take the time to see, SEA, simplify, eliminate, automate. That's my big second takeaway, in addition to, making sure the tech you want to add, that you go through the process, but look backwards as well. Simplify, eliminate, automate what you have. Evaluate your stack and make sure it still makes sense. We stop and look at our reporting and our tech stack periodically And we always find there's something either we're no longer doing, we no longer need it, or we're not using it fully and need to retrain on it. That goes for whether it's a report or whether it's technology. Is there something your team touches that you no longer need? Or is there something your team touches that's been upgraded, but you haven't trained to keep up? Is there something your team's using, touching, doing that isn't worth the time and dollar investment? You have to be willing to look objectively because it's always tempting to keep it all. Keep it all. Huh. So, technology. So many shiny objects, so little time. It's either a big benefit or you shouldn't do it at all. Well, hey, everybody. Thank you for joining me to talk about technology, the friend or foe to multifamily, and best practices for your tech stack. If you'd like a copy of our vetting checklist, send me an email at Mary, M-A-R-Y, at aptdynamics.com, Mary at aptdynamics.com. And please like, follow, comment, all the things if you found this helpful.
Let's talk technology. I'm Cecilia Cossio, and welcome to Affordable Foundations. Today's episode is Human Insight AI Power, and we are going to discuss how artificial intelligence is reshaping every aspect of our business, from leasing and marketing to maintenance, finance, HR. But the reality of it is the analysis that the AI products are doing is something that we used to do ourselves, but now it just moves at lightning speed. So how do we balance technology with our human expertise to drive smarter, fairer, and more efficient multifamily results and experiences? Is that not part of what we have been doing since the beginning of time? So we're going to be discussing AI fundamentals and the property data that powers it. I hope to explore some real use cases and just show everybody how people are using this to improve all aspects of what we do each and every day. I want to weigh the pros and cons of AI outputs and how important it is to verify them, because I've made the mistake of not verifying everything that I pull. And let me tell you, it is a big one, and it really is hard. So how do we mitigate these issues that we're seeing? And how do we use the benefits of AI? Because in the grand scheme of things, we do want to mitigate issues, and we want to make sure that we maintain compliance. Well, hopefully we can also give you some tips on how to pilot AI tools on your portfolio or properties. We all learn together, because AI is not sci-fi. It is here to stay. So don't be fearful of being replaced by AI. I'd be more scared of not learning AI and being replaced by somebody who takes the time to learn the tools. Let's start with the basics. AI in multifamily asset management or property management means systems that it ingests your core property data like rent rolls, occupancy trends, turnover trends from resident turnover to employee turnover, maintenance logs, resident feedback, and those reviews. It learns all these patterns and it helps predict outcomes. Is that not what we used to do around the conference tables? But today, if this tool is used correctly, it can deliver rent growth over market averages. So when we see the pros here, it's really that AI has the ability to analyze dozens of submarkets in minutes, and it's got the ability to spot seasonal or hyper-local rent trends and resident sentiment. And that comes from its ability to analyze the data at such speeds that we as humans have not been able to do. While we have analyzed data, it has taken us a little longer. For those of us that have been in the business for a very long time, the benefits that we have in this is that we have somewhat of a trained eye to see those gaps. And that's where we can help AI because AI is taking information that we feed into it. Remember, garbage in, garbage out. It still applies here. If your data exports are flawed, your AI outputs will be too. And many AI models operate as black boxes. What that means is that it's making recommendations without easy explanation. So keep that in mind. I always say that the best practice is always pilot your AI on historical data first. Run last quarter's rents or maintenance outcomes and review it and compare it to your AI predictions to real results and quantify that variance. I think we have to keep in mind that there's still a person behind the information. For any decision that carries more than a 1% financial impact, keep that human in the loop to review and approve. You don't want to 100% rely on AI unless you have tested it and truly continue to adjust it. And then understand the different team members that are working on these assets and what they need in order to work through the changes or through the processes, because we all learn differently. And we still need our team members. Now, I do believe that with the different generational team members on these properties, the learning opportunities are phenomenal, because I have one group that can teach the why. They need to understand the why behind the information or the teachings, while the other group is like, let's go. Keep it short, keep it quick. So again, you still need the human element. When we're looking at how AI revolutionizes marketing and leasing, well, I think for those of us that have been doing this for a long time, we used to sit around and look at rent models or rent comparisons, and we used to have our revenue analyst. And at that point, we would put all this information in an Excel spreadsheet that would then have to be reviewed and then adjust rents or adjust approaches. Well, AI engines adjust rents in real time based on supply and demand signals. So, but again, junk in, junk out, because you have to have competitor information, length of leases, and all the other stuff that used to be reviewed manually. But properties using these tools tend to achieve 2 to 4% rent growth over what traditional static pricing would generate. So that's pretty significant. And then when you talk about lead nurturing chatbots, well, I was and am involved in one of those models, and I would tell you that it is pretty cool to watch the AI product qualify prospects around the clock, schedule tours, and answer frequently asked questions. And then when you're able to see that it actually pulls out the hottest leads and marks them as most likely to lease, that's pretty amazing. You know, we live in a world where our customer is wanting an answer today. Long are gone the days of us being able to wait for that email to come through and then hope that somebody in the office responds, because I'm keeping it real. We all know that those emails are missed. And that is an opportunity to lease a unit, to lease a home, to create revenue. It is shown that these bots can boost lead to lease conversion by up to 65%. But remember, over automation risks making prospects feel like they're only talking to bots. So you have to make sure that someone stays engaged, someone is involved. The best thing about these products is that when your AI and your leasing agent are both working it, it is a very powerful tool. And the leasing agent, leasing professional, sales agent is the one that closes a deal. That doesn't change. So let's keep that in mind and remember all the generational differences that we have on these sites. You know, you have some customers that want you to follow up with a phone call or a personalized email. And I think that when we look at that and we understand the customer, we understand the AI product and how it's set up, or we train it to see the target market, then it definitely amplifies your lead to leads conversion. It does take a lot of work on the front end though. So let's be mindful that, again, you need the human element. Now, AI in maintenance and facilities. Well, I don't think that the AI product can actually go out and start working on an air conditioner. Do you? Let's see, one of my sites actually had a smart key and the chat bot could walk the prospect through the unit. But there was questions that were asked that the chatbot could not answer. But for those customers that didn't want to be bothered by a person and didn't mind using smart technology to get into the unit, see the unit, provide their driver's license before they tour the unit, because see, that's a whole nother concept. You know, people aren't always comfortable providing their driver's license. So my point to this is there's so many ways to use AI, but it doesn't replace the human element. In maintenance and facilities, we talk about predictive maintenance platforms, sensors on HVAC units, on water mains, and elevators feed AI models to forecast equipment failures. And this is done sometimes before they occur. I read that the U.S. Department of Energy reports that there is an 8 to 12% cost savings when you compare this to the traditional preventative maintenance, and up to 30 to 40% savings versus fully reactive approaches. That's what we've been doing all these years. We've been reactive. The AI model is a proactive approach. You can have failures though. You know, there can be calibration errors and they trigger a false positive that then is leading to unnecessary work orders. But you remedy that by setting up a process to schedule either monthly or quarterly sensor calibrations and pair AI alerts with quick manual walkthroughs by your maintenance. You know, how great is it for a maintenance team when they can go and pull HVAC wiring for model such and such, or when your accountant or your regional can go look at a water sensor alert because the IoT sensor is measuring that there is a high water consumption in comparison to previous months. Before, we used to wait to receive the water bill, and then we would look at the actual usage. Well, that was after the fact. I mean, we're 2 months into a problem before we realize there's a problem or fix the problem. So now we're on month 3 and 4 when we fix the leak due to whatever is happening. Well, these sensors help you find these problems in real time. I actually got to experience that about a year and a half ago through one of my vendors that provided me this water saving devices and this water sensor. And I'm telling you, it's like magic. We were able to cut the problem off before it hit our water bill over a couple of months' time. But keep in mind that all these devices have to be trusted by the users that are using them. So again, it requires that you understand the user on both ends, the user that is using them on the sites and the customer that is being led or engaging with the AI products. It still requires the human element. Again, do not be fearful of AI replacing us. Embrace it, engage in it, and learn it. Let's talk about finance and collections in AI. AI analytics flag at-risk accounts. It automates personalized outreach and has the ability to scan ledgers for anomalies. An industry baseline shows, this is going to blow your mind, or maybe not, 20% of residents pay late and 5% never pay at all. How about that? One popular AI product reported post-resident recovery service boosted move-out collections by 50%. Move-out collections by 50%. That is pretty incredible. Their core rent collection platform reduced unpaid rent by up to 40%. I also read that after Entrata acquired Colleen AI, customers saw an additional 10 to 15% workflow automation gain. Wow. But what's the warning here? Misflagging reliable residents erodes trust and can harm renewals because, again, AI is a product of what we feed into it. So we have to be mindful of what we're putting in because it's junk in, junk out. But really just requires a property manager's review on any high-risk flags before it reaches a resident. And is that not something that we've dealt with on a manual basis anyway? I also always recommend that you personalize the messages with the property management team's name and contact details. Don't overlook the need for the human element. Relationship building in this business and relationship nurturing is necessary in order to maintain a positive resident engagement because it's still about the experience. Whether it's an experience that, a Gen Z can appreciate more than a boomer, either ways, it's about the experience. So let's talk about bias, ethics, and governance power that comes with this great responsibility we're taking on. We've taken this responsibility in dealing with our resident data, our vendor data, our employee data all these years. That doesn't change. That responsibility is still great, and it requires that we engage with the appropriate tools and that we as organizations double, triple, quadruple check all the information, not just that is going in, but that is going out. We also need to be mindful of the residents we serve, the prospects we serve. AI models are trained on historical tenant screening, and leasing data can perpetuate biases, such as redlining certain zip codes or misvaluing a Section 8 voucher income, or it lacks to understand credit and income restrictions that can deny certain residents. And we are responsible to ensure that we're reviewing that information and we're being flagged or we're flagging the reports. This is no different than what we have done in the past. I know that I have said, hey, we have a 60% denial on this property here in location A, but location B for the same type of property only has a 30% denial ratio. Why? I look at, is there a income difference for the area? Is there a credit difference for the area? Am I targeting certain credit customers? There's so many variances to that, but do quarterly audits. Compare AI approval and outreach rates against fair housing benchmarks. Go to the HUD website. There is a lot of information on there. And I would say hard stop on auto denials. No application should be automatically denied without a manager signing off on it. You want to know why people are denied. And that's not just because of AI. That's because you don't want to misspend your marketing funds. You don't want to deny people who should have been approved. And really, when we're not reviewing this type of information, we're actually causing more work for our teams. So, those are just a few reasons why we should ensure that we are going through and reviewing these AI models. Let's talk about retraining our models. You swap and retrain algorithms every month, every quarter, whatever that is for your organization, to detect drift and unintended biases. That's part of our responsibility. It's necessary for us to overcome hurdles. So let's talk about some common hurdles. Fear of job loss. How many of us have heard that? But AI is a tool. It is not a replacement. However, we should reskill ourselves and our teams, our leasing professionals and our maintenance professionals, to become AI interpreters and strategists. Like, it's important they understand what that information means and how to utilize that information. But that can also lead to data overload. So let's simplify the information, simplify the dashboards. I would recommend you focus on the top 5 KPIs with threshold alerts so you get notified only when action is truly needed. And remember, don't broad brush everything. Insist on explainable AI tools that reveal the why behind each recommendation. You can't just hand it over and walk away. But before you roll it out on your portfolio, maybe you test it on one property. For those of you that work in affordable, maybe you test it on a workforce housing asset. Define the KPIs up front: occupancy lift, cost savings per unit, days delinquent. There's a lot of different targets you can use, but train your team with targeted quick start guides and create short videos. So that way, a boomer, a Gen Xer, a millennial, and a Gen Z can all embrace what we're using. They learn differently. They speak different languages, but we're all trying to deliver the same results. So review to refine thresholds, address questions. This scales success. This is a great thing. We just have to teach our people not to be scared of it. So I really hope that this has helped. Thank you for joining the session of Human Insight AI Power. Remember, AI should never be broad brushed across every asset, but it is used as a tool to provide quick analytical information. The strategy behind the rollout is still the human, but you must verify its outputs and keep human expertise at the helm. Choose one AI pilot or choose one AI concept to pilot this quarter on one of your properties. Apply the best practices to your training and roll it out. Reach out to me if you have any questions. I can be reached at I am Cecilia Cossio on my LinkedIn. Thank you so much for your time here. Together, we'll drive smarter multifamily experiences, because housing, it isn't just about buildings. It's about people, opportunities, and building a legacy for future generations. AI is just a tool, but you have the power to continue creating greatness and to be part of the change. Thank you, and have a great day.
Hello there. My name is Paul Rhodes. I'm the host of The Maintenance Mindset, as well as co-host of The Turnover alongside Chris Caramonica and Mark Sharp. This month's episode of Viewpoints covers a word that is very, very broad and steeped with meaning, depending on what your viewpoint just happens to be. I started in the apartment industry in the early 90s. You can tell by the gray hair, those of you watching on video, that I've been around for a little while, and that's fine. I remember on the very first property I went to that the height of technology at the time was getting work orders that we could print out on a dot matrix printer that had self-copying paper in it so that we could print on 3 sheets of paper at once. One we left behind in the residence apartment after we wrote on the top copy. A second one went into the residence folder So it stayed with the apartment in a paper manila folder, similar to this one. The third copy went into a separate maintenance folder. And I remember on one hand, that technology was so cool for us to add to our property because it meant we, by apartment, the maintenance team could go back through the entire history of that apartment over the years. The second one, of course, stayed with the resident file. And when you got a new resident, those work orders went away. And then, of course, the third version of that work order stayed with the residents, so they knew we were in the apartment. Fast forward now, 30 plus years later, we're not even leaving behind. A lot of cases, it's my understanding, a lot of properties aren't leaving paper behind for our residents. The resident instead gets a text message or an email that says that maintenance has been there. That's just one example of how far technology has changed. I remember being on site and over the weekend having to carry a pager and a roll of quarters because if your pager went off, we didn't have cell phones. You had to go find a payphone in order to call the pager company, who would then call the resident for you and put you in touch. That way, it was indirect. And then the newest enhancement of technology at that time was the ability to record the call that went between maintenance and the resident. Technology since then has continued to change. And the reason why I want to start there, that far back, is because at that time, we understood, and many of us today, subconsciously, we understand that technology is a tool. It's not a replacement. In this modern, post-pandemic, computerized AI world, I have a fear that we are placing technology ahead of being a tool. Let me explain it a little bit. I am an educator, and I get to travel around the country, and I've been doing that as my primary function, with the exception of 2 years spent running a maintenance department for a management company. But with that exception, for the past 20 years in the apartment industry, I have taught maintenance skills. In 2005, when I started doing this for a supplier, we began by carrying around a piece of paper, and as a supplier, we would ship to the class location parts, pieces, and tools and components. And we would gather all the customer, the management company that we were doing training for, would gather everybody at a property or a room or some location, and these parts would get shipped in. And the only thing that I and my co-presenters would have to start with is that outline and those parts. And we had to teach without the benefit of PowerPoint, slides, a deck, bullet points, handouts, follow-up e-learning, follow-up electrical assessments, those things that now we seem to absolutely require. I can remember going to a site out in New Mexico where we were training in the back of a sticks and bricks store, like a homeowner construction store. They had borrowed a training room in the back, and it was Albuquerque, New Mexico. And the room was a little bit bigger than a standard conference room. You know, one of those rooms that you would have the big long table that typically about 12 people fit around comfortably. Well, in this room that we were borrowing, we had, I believe there was 36 students in this room and myself, all jammed and crammed inside. And it was a heating class that I had to teach. So we shipped in a furnace, we shipped in a bunch of parts and wires, and I had brought some tools with me. Literally, there was just enough room for me to stand in the corner and turn to the right and point to the furnace as we were discussing the gas valve and electrical and low voltage controls, and then turn a little bit to the right where I had a chair, just enough room for me to put the box with the parts in that I was covering. There was a paper handout that we gave to all the students, but because everybody was jammed in there, there was no place to write on. At the time, that was the most amazing event. The students were so thankful. Their management companies, we got feedback from them on how great it was that the supplier was providing this instruction and how to use that knowledge. Think through today. 20 years later, if we go to a site and jam and cram and pack maintenance technicians in a room like that, it wouldn't happen. There's no room for a projector, no room for a screen, and not even that, there's no room for interaction. As a event, it almost wouldn't happen in most cases today. You see, we began back then, before carrying a projector, before worrying about the laptop, it was just show up and an exchange of ideas in an organized fashion. The learning outcomes were whatever the instructor determined at the time in the moment. And the technology that we were using at that time was UPS or FedEx or even the supplier's trucks. I can't remember in that market if we were sending them there. But at the time, that was the technology. And the reason why I'm starting here, talking about it this way, is I think that we as an industry, and maybe we as a society, maybe I'm talking above my head or out in front of my skis in saying that our level of expectation continues to progress ahead of the technology that's available today. In today's world, traveling around the country, even getting back from a couple of recent conferences, I continue to hear the demand by our leaders and management companies that we need technicians who know how to actually take things apart and put them back together. I agree. We do. And yet, at our communities, we continue to rely more and more on technology as an attempt to teach those tactical skills. There are apps, there is websites, there's the interconnected videos that are free, available, and everlasting for anybody to look at. But at the same time, we take that and we use that technology that raises our expectation for what is actually delivered. You see, my concern is that expectation, we put technology as something higher than a tool. It's my belief that technology is that tool. And I keep going back to that point. And what I mean by that is a hammer is a tool. A hammer, when used the way it is supposed to be used, how it's designed to use, can be a powerful force multiplier or a work multiplier. That's fantastic. However, the minute I think that the hammer, which was designed for one task, the minute I begin to use it to do something else, I might be able to make it work, but it won't be the force multiplier that it is when used correctly in the long term. I think today, for all of these classes that I attend, these webinars, these podcasts, even these meetings that we attend. One big example. How many meetings do you go to now that you attend with your coworkers? Things that we used to do in person, and now we attend them over camera. Yes, over camera, when we have a web style call using all of the different technology that's available to us, it's great because we save money on travel. We can do that. It's wonderful. Except, how many of those leadership meetings are you attending and the cameras are not on, and those same people are using technology that transcribes the meeting on words and delivers that to each individual attendee? And those attendees don't have their cameras on because the technology has allowed them to do multiple things or split their focus in multiple places. And you know what? I have this AI technology, this transcribing technology that can actually pay attention for me in the meeting. So I will just attend, turn my camera off, and then the words will be delivered to me later. In my mind, that's an example of technology getting in front of being more than a tool. We're expecting it to be more than a tool. In my mind, the human element is the most important part of technology. Meaning, is technology serving the human, or is it reversed? So much today, I have questions on whether or not we're putting technology out in front. And I say this as someone who lives on his cell phone. I travel with at least 2 computers, 2 or 3 different tablets. I just got a camera to help my education, and that camera has this functionality in it to where I can identify on my phone while the camera is pointed at me, and that camera will actually follow my face as I move around the room. It's an amazing technology, and it does some really cool things. But my fear is, with a little bit of AI, my face that camera is tracking could be made to say anything. And at that point, the technology is no longer serving the human. The technology is being served to the human and directing the human activities. And that's, in a summary, my fear. Therefore, develop our skills. Continue to get better. Ensure that you are using technology as opposed to being used by technology. And in the end, go out and hammer a nail every once in a while. Use a hammer for what it was done. Practice those trade skills. Thank you for joining me today on this month's episode of Viewpoints. I'll see you somewhere.
Before you leave this episode, answer these questions for an action plan based on the perspectives you've heard today. First, what idea caught my attention? Second, what was identified as something that I need to discontinue? The answers noted are a place to start for improved success. To go deeper, check out the shows by hosts you've heard from today. Thank you for being open to different viewpoints. This has been a Multifamily Media Network production.